You know, I was really fortunate in my lifetime, but my life certainly did take strange paths. I was raised in two different countries, and I even spent time growing up on a native reserve. And then I also, as I got older, traveled, went on vacation, traveled various parts of the world. And how it all started in the 1960s, really, when United States needed workers. Back then, that was the golden age of America, the 1960s. And United States was just building like they were on steroids. They were going nuts. They had so many jobs, they couldn't fill them all, and they just started to go, okay, what are we going to do? And they decided to use the union halls to put out feelers all through the world. So if you were a member of a union hall and in a blue collar job, you're you could go to the union hall. There would be a big board because this, of course, all predates computers and all that. And you could pick to where you want to go. And what the government did in the United States to make it much more lucrative to people who wanted to go, they made the wages extremely good. They gave you a startup package, and you not only got your working visa. So my family, who were young at the time, my parents, they were young, and they had a farm. They decided that, you know what, they wanted to see some of the world. It was either milk the cows, develop the farm, 7 days a week job, or go out and have some adventure. So my dad packed us all up and off we went to United States to live. And of course, we all got our green cards because hey, it was late 1960s, early 70s. What better time to live in United States? So many families from that time, from all over the world, went to United States just basically to see it and work for a bit and ended up staying. And hey, why not? I mean, United States was booming back then. And not only did the United States make it lucrative for people to come over and get their green cards with, you had to be like a plumber or an electrician, or my dad was a certified welder and iron worker and all that. You know, you couldn't just go over and they'd give you a green card. But if you were a profession that they needed, they'd put out the red carpet. So that's how there was a lot of Americans that ended up going, or Canadians and people from all over the world that ended up going there simply to work. And United States was such a great place to live, they ended up staying. Now, once we moved there, my dad would start a job, and if the job started and he knew the job was coming to an end, he'd just go call the union hall, and they would give him, many options to go anywhere he wanted in the USA. So that allowed me to experience, I bet you, about 48 states out of the country, and to actually live in about 20 of those states. So my dad would accept a job, he would get a home, we would be with him, and he would go to work. And then when he got told that the job was coming to an end, he just called up the union hall and asked my mom, do you want to go somewhere else? Do you want to go here? Do you want to go there? And between the two of them, they would pick something out. And throughout that time, we had to live in a neighborhood, go to school, um, contribute to the community, uh, blend in type thing. And that was never a problem. It was an experience and it was educational. But around that time, the whole Vietnam War thing was happening, and men had many men had already come back, and they were injured, and they were traumatized by what happened over there. I think that war went on for 10 years. And then there's ones that came back that never came back at all. So by the time that war was over, it affected so many people in the United States because it was either somebody's brother, somebody's cousin, someone's child, someone's parent. It was bad. By the time the government finally put a stop to the Vietnam War. And I remember when that started happening, there was like a dark cloud over the states, and it kind of changed the mood or the vibe. And the, the big fun of the early 50s and late 60s, it was gone. Things changed, and it affected many, many, many people. But life went on, people adjusted, and then things shifted again. And the next big shift was drugs. When drugs first hit the cities, like heroin addicts, and it was bad, just like well, it's way worse. I don't know actually, but it was bad. And that's when the ghettos all came into effect, and housing, and the government started putting laws in place to stop the drugs. That's when the government first took it serious and said, we got to do something about this because it's destroying society. And there was a lot of people at that time that were very poor. There was a lot of people that were drug addicted or suffering from mental illness, and nothing was the same as it was in the 60s by the time the mid 70s came around. But time went on. Now, around that time, I was, an adult, a young adult, and I was married and I had children. And my husband ended up being diagnosed, and within a short period of time, he died. At the end, every one of his organs were bleeding. He was bleeding throughout his entire body. And we had just moved from Michigan to Texas because at that time they were putting in cable, cable TV. There were no computers, there were no cell phones. All we had to watch was 5 stations on the TV, and that was if your bunny ears would get it in. Maybe 3. And then all of a sudden, cable comes on. And again, there was a lot of jobs because all of United States at that time and had to be hooked up to the cable. So a lot of people from Michigan, where I was at the time, lived at the time, moved down to Texas. A lot of young families did because they wanted the hell out of Michigan because of the drugs, and they wanted to get to they wanted to live in a warmer climate, whatever. Go from Michigan. Michigan's the same climate I live in, identical. And then off young families went. And I was part of that. And we chose to go to Texas. And that down there is when my husband passed. So around that time, my mother had gotten sick. My parents were getting ready to retire. My dad was. And he came back to Canada. And I just never went back. So now we're in a period of another big change. We have for Canada, where I'm at, and United States. United States and Canada are no longer allies. Like, let's face it, they're just not. It's not the way it was. And it is never going to be again. Once Donald Trump is out of office, I'm sure business, but it won't be business as usual. Not because of the trolling, nobody gives a shit about the trolling or him running his mouth and all that shit. A president of a country threatened to annex our country. And we took that very serious here in Canada, just like United States would take that very serious if the tables were turned. Not that we were afraid that he was going to bomb us off the face of the earth or what he's trying to do to Israel right now, because we're too close. If you turn our rivers and our lakes and our environment into toxic waste dumps, it's going to be in yours too. So we knew that wasn't going to happen. But I mean, that was an insult. And we were very lucky at that time to have Mark Carney, who at one time was the president of the Bank of England. This guy's a smarty pants, especially when it comes to money and how to move it around. And he just got busy saying, okay, every time Donald Trump would slap us with tariffs or tear up another deal, we would just say, okay, fine, it is what it is. We can't do anything about it. So we would get busy, and Mark Carney would, and Donald Trump would continue to tear up every deal in sight or, threaten with tariffs and all that. We were just like, okay, well, nothing we can do about it, but we all got to eat. We all got to live. So Mark Carney got in his plane and flew to just about every country he could around the world and said, we're open for business. We want trade. And after a year and a half, a year of doing that, it's worked. So we're pretty comfortable here. I mean, prices have gone up, and I mean, this isn't something that just affected Canada. This affected United States too, because people are struggling over there. I read somewhere, whether it's true or not, I don't know, that 50% of people in the United States could not afford to buy a house anymore. So that means they're going to live renting the rest of their lives. So there goes the American dream. And none of this, the invasion in Argentina, what's going down in Cuba, people are dying down there because they have no electricity, they have no water. It's bad, really bad. And it's not even being talked about. And because of what's going on with him and Benjamin Yahoo, they're blowing the shit out of Iran, and Iran's not going to give up. Iran is a huge, huge country, way larger than the United States, and they have a huge population. They have been there for thousands of years. Us over here, Canada, United States, We're babies compared to them. So this is going to be a long war unless Trump stops bombing them. And it's going to turn into another Vietnam, especially if they start to put troops on the ground. You got so many people over there looking to God for relief. And there's a change. There's a cloud over us again. Matter of fact, this time it's all over the world. It's not just one or two, three countries. It's a lot. And it's a big change and it's uncertain and it's stressful and you can feel it. They're blowing the shit out of Iran, and Iran's not going to give up. So this is bad time right now. But you know what? It'll pass. It will pass. And I already know that. It'll pass. Time will heal things. And life will go on. I won't be around to see it. But I know it. It's the way the world is. Have a good night, everybody.